A gallon of bottled water can cost you more than a gallon of gasoline. That should be insane, because water literally falls from the sky for free. Gasoline, by contrast, has to be pumped from deep underground and refined. So how does the easy product end up more expensive than the hard one? The answer isn't about the water at all, and that's the whole trick. Let's start with a bottle of water that cost you roughly $2. The water inside is worth almost nothing, less than a penny in most places. So where does the other $1.99 actually go? The bottle itself, made from plastic and oil, often costs more than the water. Then there's the cap, the label, and the shrink wrap holding a pack together. Water is heavy, and heavy things are brutally expensive to move around. A truck full of water weighs about as much as a truck full of bricks. You're paying to haul something across the country that already fell from the sky here. Some brands ship water from France or Fiji, thousands of miles across an ocean. That ocean voyage adds a shocking amount of cost to a bottle of tap-like water. But shipping still isn't the biggest reason your water costs what it does. The real money is in something you can't see or taste: the branding. Companies spend fortunes convincing you their water is somehow special. Mountains, glaciers, pristine springs. The imagery sells purity you can't verify. Here's the punchline. A huge share of bottled water is just filtered tap water. Two of the biggest bottled water brands in America come straight from municipal supplies. They run it through filters, add minerals, slap on a label, and charge a premium. The markup on that transformation can be over 1,000%. Meanwhile, the same tap water flows from your kitchen for fractions of a cent. So why does anyone pay $2 for something nearly free at home? Because bottled water isn't really a drink, it's a convenience product. You buy it when you're thirsty, away from home, and have no better option. That's when a company can charge whatever your desperation will accept. This is the golden rule of pricing. Charge for the situation, not the product. The exact same bottle costs wildly different amounts depending on where you stand. At a supermarket, a bottle in a 24-pack costs maybe a quarter each. At an airport past security, the same bottle can hit $5. Why? Because you can't bring your own liquid through the checkpoint. The airport controls the only place you can buy water, so it names the price. Economists call this a captive market, and captive markets pay through the nose. Stadiums do the exact same thing, banning outside drinks, then selling water for $6. Now let's flip to gasoline, and here's where it gets genuinely strange. Gas is one of the most competitively priced products on the entire planet. Every station posts its price on a giant sign you can read while driving past. That transparency forces stations to compete on pennies per gallon. If one station charges 10 cents more, drivers simply roll to the next one. This relentless comparison shopping crushes the profit margin on fuel. Gas stations often make only a few cents of profit per gallon of gas. That's basically nothing compared to the fortune baked into a water bottle. So the hard, refined, drilled from the earth product is sold at a razor-thin margin, and the free-from-the-sky product is sold at a luxury markup. It's a perfect reversal of what your gut tells you should happen. The reason comes down to one word: transparency, or the lack of it. You know exactly what a gallon of gas costs everywhere within a mile of you, but you have no idea what a bottle of water should cost, so any price feels fine. Without a reference price, sellers can push the number up almost freely. This is a psychological trick economists call price anchoring, or the lack of one. When you don't know the real value, you rely on the price itself as a clue. And weirdly, a higher price can actually make water seem better to your brain. Studies show people rate identical products as tastier when they cost more. So bottled water sells a feeling, not a substance, and feelings have no fixed price. Now let's talk about who actually pockets all this money. The bottled water business is dominated by a handful of giant beverage companies. They own dozens of brands you'd never guess belong to the same parent. For them, water is the ultimate product. Cheap to source, expensive to sell. There's no cocoa to buy, no coffee beans to import, no sugar to sweeten. The core ingredient costs essentially zero, which makes the margins beautiful. That's why beverage giants pushed bottled water so hard over the last few decades. In the 1970s, buying water in a bottle seemed almost ridiculous. Then, clever marketing turned water into a status symbol and a health statement. Suddenly, carrying a branded bottle said you were fit, clean, and modern. That image, not the liquid, is what you're really paying a premium for. Now compare that to how the gasoline business actually makes its money. Here's a secret. Gas stations barely make money on the gas itself. The fuel is a loss leader designed to pull you onto the property. Once you're standing there, they hope you walk inside the little shop. And inside, they sell you coffee, snacks, cigarettes, and lottery tickets. Those items carry fat margins that dwarf the thin profit on fuel. And one of the best-selling items in that little shop is, of course, bottled water. So the gas station lures you with cheap fuel and profits on your water. The whole business model is a bait and upsell, and gas is just the bait. That's why the fuel can be so cheap. It's not really the point. Gasoline prices also swing wildly with the global price of crude oil. When crude spiked in 2022, drivers watched pump prices climb almost daily. That volatility comes from oil being a global commodity traded on open markets. The underlying oil price is set far away, and it drags gas along with it. Water prices, by contrast, barely move because they aren't tied to any commodity. The company just picks a price that sounds reasonable and holds it there. Nobody can undercut them with the screaming roadside sign war. There's another hidden layer here worth understanding: taxes. A big chunk of what you pay for gasoline is actually government tax. Federal and state fuel taxes are baked right into the pump price you see. So gasoline is doing something incredible. It's cheap, even while heavily taxed. Bottled water carries almost no tax, yet still costs more per gallon. Let that sink in. The untaxed sky water beats the taxed earth fuel on price. The lesson isn't that water companies are evil, it's that pricing is about perception. A product's price often has almost nothing to do with what it costs to make. Price is set by what people will pay and what they can compare it against. Take away the comparison, and you can charge almost anything you want. This trick shows up far beyond water once you learn to spot it. Movie theater popcorn works exactly the same way as airport water. You can't bring your own, and there's nowhere else to buy it, so the price soars. The popcorn barely costs anything, but the captive audience pays a fortune. Concert drinks, hotel minibars, and stadium beer all run the identical playbook. In each case, they control the only place you can buy, so they set the price. Bottled water just happens to be the purest and most obvious example of all. Because the raw material is free and abundant, the entire price is pure story. So next time you buy a bottle, you're mostly paying for packaging and belief. None of this means bottled water is worthless. Sometimes it's genuinely convenient. In an emergency or a desert, that convenience is worth every penny. But when you're home, standing next to a working faucet, the math falls apart. That gap between value and price is where every clever business quietly lives. Gasoline lives in a brutal, transparent market that grinds its margins to dust. Bottled water floats in a foggy market where nobody knows the real price. And that fog, not the water, is the most valuable thing they're selling. The bottled water industry globally is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, all of it built on a product that literally rains down for free. It's one of the greatest pricing magic tricks in modern business history. Understanding it changes how you look at nearly every price you meet. You start asking not what does this cost, but what am I really paying for? And you notice that convenience, image, and captivity cost far more than materials. So the water isn't overpriced by mistake, it's overpriced by design. And gasoline isn't cheap by accident, it's cheap because you can compare it. Transparency is the enemy of markup, and secrecy is its best friend. That single idea explains a startling amount of what things cost around you. Whenever a price feels weird, ask whether you can actually compare it. If you can't, someone is probably charging you for the fog. The cheapest move, of course, is to carry a refillable bottle and fill it up. That one habit sidesteps the entire markup and saves real money over a year. But the beverage giants are betting you won't, and mostly, they're right. Convenience almost always beats math, and companies build empires on that fact. So the next time your bottled water costs more than gas, you'll know why. It's not about the liquid, it's about who gets to set the price. And in a market with no comparison, the seller always gets to decide. That's the hidden economics of bottled water, hiding in plain sight all along. If this changed how you see a simple bottle, imagine what else is hiding. Stick around, because almost everything you buy has a story like this one.